Does money make you happy?
No.
Why not?
I was the most happy when I had just enough money and I couldn't splash it around. When I had a huge amount of money, I wasn't happy. I was happier travelling on the underground than being driven around in a chauffeur-driven Bentley.
Gerald, thanks a lot for coming back on the show.
It's always a pleasure, Rob, to see you.
We're about 1,000 episodes in now, and I was just saying that it's been, probably nearly 2 years since we last saw each other?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, with the lockdown, that has kept us apart. Before that, we used to see each other on quite a regular basis.
We did.
That's the case with a lot of people at the moment. And the trouble is you get used to being sort of a bit of a hermit, which is not good.
And health-wise, everything okay, most importantly?
Yeah, no, that hasn't been affected at all because I'm still cycling 25 miles a day and I've added a long walk now to my repertoire. I love walking. I never used to do that. I walk for miles, and Maura won't let me go to the gym anymore. So I've got a whole sort of TRX going on at home in the drawing room, which is quite good.
So that was probably 90 seconds, and now let's talk about your famous speech. Poor old Gerald can't get away from it, but I want to do something completely different. You've probably been asked the same questions a zillion times. So I actually wanted to do more of a money thing. Let's get the bad stuff out of the way. Is it true you lost $500 million in essentially capital value from your famous speech?
Yeah, $500,000 would have been all right. Yeah. I've got to live with that.
I got my retainers in, $500 million.
Yeah, I mean, that was the amount that the share price dropped in terms of what our market cap was before the speech and afterwards.
So literally overnight, within a day?
No, the 500 million took about 2 weeks to get.
So how did you feel when you saw the value of your companies? Was it your shareholding or the company shareholding?
No, it wasn't. It was the entire company. So it wasn't only me. I had quite a lot of shares and lost, the vast majority of the value of them. But no, it was. I managed to lose a lot of money for a lot of people. All the shareholders were hit by this. Yeah, anyone who had shares in Ratner's at the time. So
I don't know if anyone could comprehend what it feels like to have $500 million wiped off your net worth in 2 weeks. So could you give us a little bit of it? Could we learn from your pain?
Well, I always say to somebody who's moaning that they've just lost, £1 million or a couple of $1 million, I said, well, that's nothing, compared to what I lost. You shouldn't be that upset about it, And I'm still smiling. I lost $500 million, but I wasn't smiling, to be honest with you, when it happened. I mean, we're now talking, 30 years ago. And it was just like daggers going into my stomach. Not the money so much as the fact that the reason that $500 million was wiped off was because nobody was coming into the shops. That was the thing that was upsetting me so much, and all because of a stupid joke. I'd sweated blood and tears to get that business where it was. It was a loss-making business, and within 7 years we'd taken it to 125 million profit.
Wow.
And heading for 200 million. The brokers were going for 200 million.
And what was the turnover at that point?
Turnover was about 1.6 billion.
And this was in 1990, was it?
This was in I made the speech actually in April of 1991.
So 1.6 billion turnover, 200-ish million projected profit in 1990. What are we now, 30 odd years after that? With inflation, that must be like 5 billion now.
Well, it would have been over $1 billion profit, and there isn't one retailer that is making that sort of profit. So, we'd cracked America, which was very unusual for a British retailer. And, we were in the middle of a recession, yet they were forecasting profits of 200 million against 125 million, which we'd made the day before of the speech. So everything was going fantastically well. And it was just the fact that I could understand, if we made bad trading decisions, but it was over a stupid joke, which I actually felt was not, well, of course it was misreported. The papers were totally disingenuous, but it was my fault for giving them the ammunition. They said that all my jewellery is, they quoted me as saying all my jewellery's crap, which I never ever said. I said about one item, a sherry decanter, which we acquired from H. Samuel when we bought the company. And then I talked about how the rest of the stuff would be high quality. But, you know, if you call one of your products crap, then people assume everything you sell is crap. And I accept by implication that, you know, I can understand them going for me, especially as we were then in, you know, as I said, a recession, and people were losing their jobs, they couldn't pay their electricity bills, and here I was portrayed as sort of somebody making fun of them, which of course is not the truth.
Let's say something like 9/11 or Michael Jackson's death happened on that day. Do you think you would have been in the media that day?
Well, there was a lot of fuss about the poll tax, which you're too young to remember, but it was a tax introduced...
I'm not too young to know about tax though, but...
No, yeah, no, tell me about it. But no, Margaret Thatcher, her one big mistake, which actually brought her down as the most successful Prime Minister we ever had, is she introduced this poll tax, which was all wrong. And it was the day that they had decided to abandon it. And it was actually the headlines of The Sun. But after my speech, because I saw the early editions, had that as the headline, but they removed that from the headline,
right,
and they put mine. Also, at the Institute of Directors at the Albert Hall, where I made the speech, one of the other speakers was President de Klerk, who died yesterday, coincidentally, and he announced the end of apartheid, and he talked about, you know, Nelson Mandela coming out of prison, and that we would be playing cricket against South Africa after this long period, which we hadn't been. I would have thought that would have made the headlines. But no, it was this was the headline, this was the story that they wanted. And I think, to answer your question, whatever would have happened, they would have put this, because they love the fact that it ticked all the boxes of somebody who supposedly, you know, was very, very wealthy, making fun of people who are suffering, which is their favourite topic of headline. You know, one rule for the rich, one rule for the poor. Complete and utter rubbish. Anybody knows me, as you know me, I'm totally down to earth. The last thing I have is contempt for my customers. I love my customers. But, you know, if you read it in The Sun, it didn't look that way.
No.
And they're my customers, of course.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, I thought it was one of the worst smear campaigns ever, personally. And obviously I know you very well, so I know the truth. Let's come back to that part in a minute, because, like I said, I want to take you down a different angle of money-related content. Also, I don't know what episode it is, but on the Disruptive Entrepreneur, in fact, you were probably one of my first 5 guests, would you say, Harry? I really believe they should make a movie about your life. I have actually reached out to a few people, but you know, you watch The Wolf of Wall Street, or you watch The Founder, or you watch Succession, but I mean, your life is really kind of a real life version of all those kind of things mixed together. But for now, Gerald, I just want to know, how did it feel to lose $500 million? I know you said like daggers, but you know, take us on that journey of how you recovered from that feeling, and then let's ask you some money related questions.
Well, you know, about a year before I made the speech, I was on a salary of £850,000 a year, plus all the jet that went with it, and all the, you know, flat in London, or everything that, you know, the expenses and everything. So, and the income tax at the time was 60%. So I was only, if you like, only taking home 400 grand a year.
30 years ago.
30 years ago, exactly, with not a lot of overheads to live on, because I was living in a company flat and stuff like that, although I did have a house in the country. And the Chancellor, Nigel Lawson, the father of Nigella Lawson, announced that he's lowering the income tax, top rate of income tax, from 60% to 40%. I'm listening to this on the radio in the car. Didn't flinch. It was of no interest to me whatsoever. I didn't say, oh, hooray, you know, I'm now got another £250,000. It made no difference, the money. It was never about the money. Because I was focused on building the largest jewellers in the world, which I did, I was focused on meeting brokers' forecasts because they kept upping the thing, and I was focused on just having a successful business. I had enough money for what I wanted, but my main excitement was not spending money, was actually, being competitive in business, which is not particularly healthy, but you should have a balance and enjoy the trappings of it and everything like that. But that wasn't me at the time. Now I'm totally different. Now if I get a speech that gives me $4,000, I'm $4,000 better off. I start cheering, especially as I'm not getting it at the moment with the, I'm beginning to get them again, but for 18 months I didn't get it. I really appreciate it. So now when I make $3,000 or $4,000, I'm delighted about it, and I really, think that puts me in a good mood. Then, to, make £250,000 in them didn't make a blind bit of difference.
And is that just because you had so much, it was all contextual, or have you not appreciated money?
Yeah, there's so many ice creams you can eat in one day. I went to Barbados for holidays, I went skiing, I had everything that I wanted. Another $250,000 would not have said, made me go on holiday one more time or have anything. You get to a point where it's about the power, if you like, or some people say ego, but yeah, it wasn't the money side of it that didn't make a bit of difference until I lost the $500 million and didn't have any money.
Money don't make any difference until you.
Yeah, until you only appreciate money when you don't have it. In a way, ironically, it's a bit like everything else in life.
So let's talk about money then, because my personal vision involves helping people on this planet get a better financial education. And I think there's some things that we're raised as children in our culture, in our religions, which I'm not sure they're that healthy, and I'd love your thoughts on it. So in some religion, it is quoted that either money or the love of money is the root of all evil. What do you think about that?
Well, I disagree with that. I think that money is incredibly important, and if you can make money, and the making it is also very important, because to make money, you have to use your brain. And we always reading about exercise, which I was talking about, and to help mental health and all that sort of stuff. But actually, using your brain and pitting your wits against the finest brains, and I believe the finest brains are in commerce, they're not in the public sector. Here I am criticising half the population.
Let's have another hour episode.
I do believe that there's more risk in the private sector. The
public sector's not really run like a business, is it?
It's not run like a business. That's why the NHS is in the mess it's in. But let's not go down that route. But the private sector is run by people who really are bright at the top, really sharp intellect, like yourself, and you know what it's like. And it's not always about sort of an analysis or research. It's just seat the pants decisions, taking risks, having a gut feeling about something, but using your brain. And when you're using your brain to the full against somebody else who's doing it, a competitor in the same trade as you, then you get a tremendous kick out of that. By exercising your brain, you get tremendous pleasure. And and the only reason that people do it is to make money. So, and I see people that don't have money, and it's a struggle. And you hear about these people, you listen to them on the phone-ins saying, well, I've been cut off and I'm not getting help from the government and I'm getting this and that. And what good does it do them? They put the phone down and that's the end of it. They're back, you're not going to get any sympathy from anybody. Somebody said that you tell your problems to somebody, 80% of the people are not interested, and the other 20% are pleased you've got those problems. So there's no point in moaning about it. So yeah, I do see the other side of the coin though, where people have made money and they don't know how to handle it. Maybe they're too young, like a footballer who's 23 and he's suddenly got a Bentley and he's driving around, or they're buying paintings and stuff that they don't really appreciate. And they feel some sort of guilt that they've got so much so easily, so quickly. But if you do look at somebody who's worked hard, got the rewards, there's somebody that I look up to and admire.
Mm. Another thing that's commonly believed about money is that we don't need billionaires, and there's an unfair distribution of wealth, and there should be this massive wealth tax, etc. What do you say to that?
Well, talking about the national health, it is the very wealthy bankers and people like that that are paying for it. It's an amazing how few people are actually paying such a big proportion of the taxes. So those people need to be encouraged because we depend on them for our services. Instead, we criticise them. Bankers are always the target to be criticised. Yet they, to make the world go round, you do need people to generate profits. Otherwise, you have a Jeremy Corbyn situation where you turn into a third world. If you remember him, it doesn't work. Socialism.
All of my friends were really worried at that point. Where
your partner, Mark.
Yeah, Mark.
He was a great fan. Well, it would have been the end of the world. It would have been, because this redistribution of wealth, whenever it is applied, actually ends up with the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. But you need entrepreneurs to generate profit, like yourself, to pay for the services. I mean, you're saying that your tax has never been higher. Yeah, it's true, and neither's mine. But the more we make, the better off the public sector is. It's a shame that they're wasting half of it.
This is the problem I find, is that people think tax the rich, but the rich create the products and services that serve the masses. If you overly tax the rich, you disincentivize production and growth. Because a lot of my friends are now saying, I'm moving to Cyprus. Like, they actually are saying it. That's obviously, you got 20% on everything you charge on VAT. Corp tax has gone up from 19 to 25%, which is basically a third hike. National insurance just went up. When's income tax going up? It's going up. You've got business rates, all these stealthy taxes. Then, of course, you've got tax on everything that you buy. Anyway, thank you for that answer, Gerald. It's not about me. I could get pissed off about this.
Can I just come back to you on that tax situation? Somebody once came to me, an accountant, and says, you're selling those earrings too cheap. They're £20. If we sell them for 25, we'll make an extra £5. I said, we won't make an extra £5 because the sales will go down if we sell them for 25. £20 or £19.99, that's the right price. And it's the same with tax. What the governments don't understand, if they put up tax, just like when they put up capital gains tax, they actually ended up, just because some idiot accountant decides it's going to go up by 10%, he thinks he's got his little graph there and his paper and his balance sheet, he says, right, we're going to get 10% more. It doesn't work like that. When they put up the capital gains tax, they actually got less revenue. And with this government putting up income tax, if they do, as you say, people will disappear off to Cyprus and they'll end up with less revenue. So it's not as simple as that.
No, it's not. There's a tax bell curve, I've seen it. There's an optimum taxation.
There's an optimum
amount,
there's a guy that
it's not 70%.
The people that are successful are people that can pitch something at the highest price, but they can pitch a house or they can pitch a car at the right. There's a guy called Arnold Clark who started off one of the biggest car businesses, and I spoke to him because I did a speech for him. And one of his great virtues was he could price a car. It'd be look at a car, nobody could do it like him. He'd look at a car and know exactly what to sell it for. And accountants don't understand that. One accountant once said to British Airways, if you cut out one of the chocolate biscuits that you get with your coffee, if we cut down from 2 to 1, we will save £25,000 a year. Well, in fact, that was the end of British Airways' luxury offering, because it was the thin end of the wedge.
Right, and they just started chopping everything.
They started chopping. You don't even get any nuts now.
Gerald, what have you learned about money, making billions and losing $500 million?
Well, I now appreciate money as I went for a long, long period without any money. I had a 7-year, I was in isolation before it was a thing, and I'd given up. And I had lost everything, and I had credit card bills. I just sort of lay in bed watching Countdown. It was a miserable time. So, and I had absolutely nothing after having all of that money which I was describing to you, the 850,000 salary and the private jets and all that. It was a bit of a culture shock to suddenly be completely wiped out. Because the shares had gone from £4.20 to 2p, and I also
£4.20 to 2p.
Yeah, and I also, on top of that, had a tax bill of £1 million. So I was about as badly off as anybody could possibly be. I then went 7 years. The only thing that was keeping me sane was being fit and healthy and cycling. So I went into the health club, and I made about £4 million doing that. And that was the best money that I'd ever made, simply because of the fact that I hadn't had a holiday for 7 years. I didn't eat much for 7 years. I had nothing. Take my children out of school and stuff like that. And when I suddenly got money again, albeit nothing like the amounts that I had before, I really appreciated it. So it's just human nature, sadly. That's why I say to people when I do a speech, if you are successful, take a step back and pat yourself on the back, enjoy the fact that you got a few bob in the bank, and spend it. Because that's the pleasure of being successful, and you should enjoy it. Smell the roses while you've got that opportunity, because if you do lose it, and in the private sector you can lose it, because it's a risk. Business is all risk. The more risks you take, the better you do, and vice versa. So when I didn't have any money, it was pretty awful. But since I've learnt that lesson now today, and I'm very careful with money. And I don't throw money around. And, I was coming here from the station, I could have got an Uber, but I thought I'll save myself a tenner and walk. And I now have respect for money simply because I lost it all. And I'm careful with that, because I really don't want to go back to that situation of being skint again, because it's a very unpleasant experience.
Thank you, Gerald. Is there something about money that you think the masses don't understand?
Well, I think the only thing is that I think that you sometimes have the attitude with the general public that there's one set of people that have got money and they're rich, and that's not them. They'll never be part of that. And that was the case when I was growing up as a young kid, but that's not the case anymore. If anything, it's the reverse. You've got a lot of wealthy people that have lost it all, and a lot of young people that have made money so quickly. So, it's no good saying, well, that's for them and we will never be like them. You can be like them. It's not that difficult. Everybody is capable of being like them, if you will. They're not how the other half live, because you can be like that. But one thing I would say is that if you are successful and you do make a few bob, you do need to balance. You need to have balance in your life. You don't want to be a workaholic.
Were you?
Funny enough, I wasn't a workaholic. I've never been a ridiculously hard worker, because I actually believe that people that are successful, it's not actually the shoe leather. I know people always say that. I actually think it's just making smart decisions, and that doesn't take very long. You can spend a whole lot of time analysing something and then making the wrong decision. But then you could, make the right decision in quite a short time. So I tend to get other people to do a lot of work. It's never been in my DNA, to be honest with you, Rob, to work really hard and get up at the crack of dawn and burn the midnight oil. That's just not me. I don't actually really think that is much of an existence. To boast that, somebody came to me and they say, oh, I'm doing a 14-hour day and I can't even go on holiday with my wife and kids. Well, I don't think that's very clever. They're not really organising their life. If they can't organise 2 weeks off with their wife and kids, then they shouldn't be running a big business.
Amen to that. Would you say that people are getting richer, younger, and there's more opportunity now because of internet and the globalization of our customer base? Obviously, you pivoted your jewellery from physical to then online. Do you think that the internet and social media, maybe even now the metaverse, do you think, is this an area of business that you think can accelerate our wealth more quickly? Is it something you're into?
Listen, I'm on the train, I'm looking around, because I tend to look around at people, people watch, and everybody is not looking at me, they're all looking at their phones. So as long as that's the case, that's where it's happening. I don't think it's a good thing in any way at all. And but that is what everybody's doing. I'm looking at a girl sitting next to me. She's got her laptop out and she's got all the clothing that she's going through, and she's clicking. She's buying something for about 500 quid, some clothes on the train. I mean, it's just unbelievable the amount of money that, and you know, in a way, you know, I like tech as you do, but I do find that, you know, it's wonderful. I mean, even coming here using. Because I'm not quite sure where it was, using Google Maps to tell me to turn left. It's all brilliant. We all take it for granted, but it's absolutely fantastic compared to getting lost like I used to do when I was young, which is quite annoying. So, yeah, I love technology, but the only thing is that by looking at your phone all day or looking at your laptop is not a good life. I mean, somebody told me that Americans are spending 90% of their life indoors.
Wow.
And I, you know, often under fluorescent light or something like that. One of the benefits that I've had during the lockdown is these long walks by the river with trees, cycling, being out, for a simple reason. I know I'm losing money. I could be making money. I could be doing more mentoring, which I have to turn down and stuff like that, because I have to take time to do that. But it makes me happy. And I've realised it would make anybody happy to be outdoors, breathing the fresh air, and not be stuck in front of a phone or a laptop, because you begin to feel a bit sick doing that for too long.
Yeah. Amen. Now, I nicked this question. I think it's a brilliant question. I wish I'd come up with this myself, and I'm going to be borrowing it more from your article, your interview in This Is Money. And I'd love your answer here. If you were the Chancellor, how would you manage the budget of our government differently?
Well, you know, everybody turns round and says that we should be spending more on the police, more on national health. This is going to make me very unpopular, even more unpopular than I am, but I'm going to say it anyway because that's the way I feel.
Yeah, good.
You'll never, ever hear somebody say, well, I think we should give the nurses less money, or we should cut the budget, you know, on the trains or something like that. Nobody will ever, it's always, politicians are always boasting that they can spend more money, or they're investing more into this and into that. Well, that's all wrong. At home, you don't boast that you can, you know, spend more money. I mean, I would like an advertising budget for my online company, but I can't afford it. You know, the budget won't allow it. That is the way we run businesses. We don't boast that we can spend money here and spend money there. The government waste and spend too much money. And the attitude that everybody has, all the MPs, the general public, the whole time, that it's a good thing to be throwing more money at the public service, doesn't make sense to me, because it's not their money, it's our money. And part of being successful is to control your cost. Have you control the purse strings? And you know, what you look at successful people in companies, and they're the ones, the reason that these accountants are controlling the businesses, because they control the purse strings, and they don't let money go out of the business left, right and centre. Yeah. All governments do, and they seem to think it's a good thing to spend as much as possible, and that's why your taxes are as high as they are. That's why things, you know, are tough at the moment, because we've got a debt of 2.5 trillion. That isn't healthy.
Well, if you had a friend who was a gambling alcoholic who was going to invest in some crypto, you probably wouldn't give that person money because you probably would perceive they couldn't manage it very well. And I think what begrudges a lot of my entrepreneurial friends is they're forced to give much of their money to the government. Let's take a company. If we can't trade insolvently, it's illegal. Exactly. We can't trade knowing we're trading at a loss. That's how the government are. They're trading at, if it is true, the $1 trillion deficit or pound deficit that they're in, yet we're forced to give them more and more money. Yet it would be illegal for a private company to trade like that. So I always think there shouldn't be this divide between the billionaires and the rich and the government. The government could learn a lot about running an enterprise from the billionaires because they have to, because it's illegal not to, where governments are disincentivized to be solvent and profitable. And I think that's half the problem.
No, I agree with completely. They were talking, the government, about putting unions on the board because they felt that it was wrong that directors were earning so much more than workers and stuff like that, and that would give them a say. But the problem with that is that actually you have a fiduciary duty to make a profit if you're running a company, especially a public company. You, as a director of a public company, that is the law, that you have to increase profitability if you're a director. Now, if you put one of the workers on, I mean, I have plenty of people that I've put on the board that were managers and they worked their way up, but if you put somebody just on there, to a union person to speak on behalf of the, they're not on that board to make profit. And if they're not on the board, the people that are running a company are not there to make a profit, the company will go backwards. Tax will go down and the government will suffer. So profit is a very good thing, and it should be encouraged by governments, not the reverse.
We will probably get into some hot water if we keep going down the government rabbit hole, but thank you for answering that. Something else I'm passionate about, Gerald, is getting better financial education and knowledge in schools. When I was at school, I was taught geography and French. It was called géographie. But I wasn't taught budgeting, forecasting, managing my emotions around money. I wasn't taught the laws of nature of money, the beliefs around money, the society and religion impositions about money and what money really is. So I'm taught what an element in the periodic table is, but I'm not taught what money is. And to me, there's something wrong with that. So is there anything you think should be taught in schools about money that isn't?
Well, the thing about school is, it doesn't really matter. I would disagree with you slightly on that. I know that everybody...
entitled to my opinion.
No, everybody says, well, they've cut out domestic science, which is something that is useful because we all cook, but they've stopped that. But actually, what school does, to a certain degree, is just train your brain.
Teach you to memorise.
Teach you to memorize, teach you to learn. So then you go out into the real world and your brain is receptive to learning and to training, whether you've learned English literature or whatever, which is a good thing. I mean, to do English literature is something that you don't actually use in the real world, but it's the best thing that you can do.
Sure, I mean, maths, English, and many of the things, certainly not knocking what is taught in schools, because I often think it's a bit common just to point fingers at the school system. I think it's good if you want to be a doctor, a dentist, a lawyer, an accountant, etc. But what about if you want to be an entrepreneur? They do not teach you what money is. Like if you went to carpentry, you'd learn how to use a hammer. And a hammer is an effective lever which puts nails in better than your hand can and pulls nails out better than your hand can. It's a tool and it's a lever. Money is a tool and a lever, but we're not taught how to use it. Why not?
Well, funny enough, I was talking to a chef who owns his restaurant, and he was at the moment, it's a big issue, obviously, in getting good people, good staff. But he actually said that he would rather take on somebody in an executive position in his restaurant business who hadn't been particularly well educated or gone to university. He would rather have somebody who's worked up the ranks, who put the bins out at 2 o'clock in the morning, get their hands dirty and learn the trade the hard way, rather than somebody who swans in from university, thinks they knows it all, doesn't have the work ethic, and just wants to come in at a higher echelon in the business. My best thing that I ever did was work in the shop behind the counter. I left school at 15, worked in Wood Green, and I learnt the jewellery business firsthand. I knew nothing about it, but I learnt it actually being there, and I was in the shop for a long time. So when I had 2,500 shops and I spoke to managers, they had more respect for me because they knew that I'd been exactly where they were as a manager serving customers, whereas you've got these sort of top accountant, I keep having a go at accountants, I don't mean to, but people who are coming in, been headhunted from some other company, and then they were headhunted somewhere else, and they'd got this degree and all that sort of stuff, but they never actually understood what it's all about, is the 3 foot between you and the customer, selling them products. That's what it's all about.
So sales, would that be something that's good to be taught in schools?
Sales is the most important thing. I mean, you are the great salesman of all time. And, well, you are. You're a brilliant salesman, and I admire that in you enormously, because I realise that we're always selling, whatever we're doing. We're selling now. You know, when I had my business in America, I had to go out there and I had to sell it to investors. Not only do we have to sell jewellery in the shop, we're telling the story of our business, we're trying to get people back in. We're always selling. That's why when you get these emails or cold calls, and some people get very rude and they slam the phone down, I don't do that. I admire those people. Okay, they're struggling, they're just trying to make a buck, but they are selling. And that is what business, the most important thing. You know, I learnt my trade walking down Petticoat Lane in London with my father, and it was they were selling stuff in the market stall, and it was simply the bloke that shouted the loudest sold the most, and it hasn't changed in his own way.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you certainly shout the loudest on social media. You're always on it.
Right.
And I don't know how you come up with so many different subjects. I know you must be lying awake at night thinking about can I now talk about? Because you talk about
repressed childhood, Gerald.
Right.
All this expression through repression as I was growing up. Anyway, Gerald, this is not about me. This is about you. But I agree with you. I mean, a lot of influencers now say attention is currency. Yes. And if no one knows who you are and no one can hear who you are, then you're no one.
You're no one. You can't be a wallflower in business. And it goes against some people who are just genuinely shy. But you can't be that, especially not with social media, not the way it is today. If you're not big on social media, you're dead. Everyone knows that.
Yeah, amen. Gerald, what entrepreneur alive do you admire the most right now, and why?
Well, strangely enough, there's these entrepreneurs that I won't mention them because I've done enough criticising of things today, but they are like about what I would say a jack of all trades. 1 minute they're in that business, and then they put their name onto everything like that. I don't believe that you can do that successfully. I believe that the ones that I admire are the ones that really know their trade. There's a guy called George Davis, which a lot of people haven't even heard of, who started Next. Yes, he was thrown out when the shares went down to 6p, but he knew how to sell clothes. He then went on to Asda and started George. Very, very competitive prices, but he didn't have a lot of abilities in management. He didn't have a lot of abilities, certainly not in finance, but he knew his cloth. And that put him in good stead, because the most important thing is in the buying, in the product. It's obvious if you're in retail, you've got to have the right product. He started George, that became very successful. He then left because he tends to have arguments with people, and he then went to Marks and Spencer's and started Per Una again. There's not very many people who start one successful brand like that. He did 3 huge brands, and he's older than I am, and I phoned him up actually a few weeks ago. And his secretary said, oh, he's in Austria. I said, what's he doing there? She said, he's in a cloth factory looking at cloth. And he's actually feeling the cloth and understanding that he wants this cloth for his products, you know? And if you look at my office, I don't have balance sheets all over the desk. I have jewellery, you know? So I admire people who know their product rather than just moving balance sheets around the place. So George Davis would be the answer to that, not the obvious names that you would think I'd come up with.
Thank you, Gerald. What do you think about cryptocurrencies?
Well, a friend of mine who's like a sort of in the city type of thing, his 19-year-old son, about a couple of years ago, said to him, you should buy Bitcoins. And he told him that he's a complete idiot, you know. And this guy is a very, very bright guy, and there's nothing that he doesn't know about stocks and shares, and bonds and investment. And he's been around the block quite a few times in the city. And his 19-year-old son knew nothing, and he told him that he knew nothing. But it turned out that his 19-year-old son was absolutely right, and he had to apologise to him a year later when it went up 30, 40. So sometimes you need sort of a fresh approach. You can't look back at stats or records and say, well, it's going to go in that direction. I had a pension once, and the guy showed me why I should invest in shares, and this was about 1992 or something, and he showed me the last 15 years that share prices have gone up every single year, with the exception of 87 where we had the market collapse, but even then it recovered to only minus 7%. But every year the stock market had outperformed anything, even property. So I thought, I'll invest in shares. The next 15 years, all that shares did was nothing. They didn't repeat the previous 15 years. In fact, about 2 or 3 years, it halved. So just looking at a bleeding chart and saying, well, that chart goes like that, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to carry on like that. So that's the joy of business. There's the uncertainty. Nobody knows. That's one thing that I have learned. That whatever you expect, the opposite will happen probably. That's what I like, the risk, the excitement.
Should we do something different? Should we do a quick-fire 15-second round? So, Gerald, we're here live on TikTok. You're getting lots of comments there. And we've introduced now into our longer form content the 15-second round. Right. So your challenge is to answer each one of these questions in 10 to 15 seconds. And then what we do is we put them on TikTok, because actually that's one of the biggest growing channels.
Right, that's a bit young, isn't it?
It is a bit young, but hey, you just said about we've got to take a fresh approach.
I thought we were a bit old for TikTok.
No, we're not old for TikTok.
Oh, good.
So we've got 1, 2, 3. Yeah, we've got 5 or 6 quick fires. And now I'll tell you what, those of you that are on the lives, I'm getting loads of great comments here, by the way, Gerald. If anyone wants to ask a question, because we're pretty good for time, we'll do a little bit of a bonus Q&A at the end as well. So if you've got questions on the live, put them in the comments. All right, so ready, guys? Everyone ready? Yeah? Gerald, does money make you happy?
No.
Why not?
Because I would rather have money than not have money 1,000,000 times. But you asked me whether money makes you happy, and just having the money in itself won't make you happy. You have to know how to spend it. And I know somebody who bought a Picasso and they didn't even take it out of the bubble wrap. It was just left on the thing. Well, I didn't know them, but I read about them, and it's just ridiculous. They won't get any pleasure from that whatsoever. So yeah, the answer to the question is on its own, no, it doesn't make you happy. I've got far less money than I had in the 80s, and I'm much happier. I know I don't look happy, that's my face, but I am happier. Because I know I appreciate money now.
All things equal, Gerald, do you think you'd be happier with or without money? All other things equal.
I would be happier. I was the most happy when I had just enough money and I couldn't splash it around. When I had a huge amount of money, I wasn't happy. I'm not saying that I'm not telling everybody this is the way to go. I'm just giving you my experience. I was happier travelling on the underground than being driven around in a chauffeur-driven Bentley. Because when you drive around in a chauffeur-driven Bentley, everybody looks at you and thinks, oh, you're very important and you have to do this and you have to live up to it. When you're on the underground, you can behave any way you want to behave. You can just be yourself. You don't have to be part of that. And also, simply, that if you are short of cash and you then manage to just scrape up enough, you'll really enjoy what you spend it on. You'll really enjoy that holiday much more, if it really cost you a lot, means a lot to you, rather than just on the expense account, going first class to Barbados or something. If you go on EasyJet to Portugal and you work bloody hard.
Unless it's on someone else's expense, of course. Like these people who want the private jets with the speaker fees.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I haven't got, unfortunately, I'm a speaker, but I'm not in that league. I don't even get offered. When I started doing it, I was always sent business class, but now that's been downgraded to economy, but I couldn't care less.
Gerald, what's the most luxurious thing you've ever bought and how much was it?
Well, I bought a helicopter, a Sikorsky helicopter, for $2.5 million. I went down to the place where they showed you the helicopters, and I went up in a round robin thing, which was about $500,000. Then I went up with a middle one, which was $1 million. But then I went with the top Sikorsky 7-seater or 8-seater. And then my finance director said, I knew you were going to end up with that one. And he says, well, what discount did you get? Because it's $2.5 million. And it's second hand, it's not even new. And I turned around and I said, well, they're prepared to throw in the cushions. So it was completely ridiculous.
Gerald, would you rather have 1 million engaged followers on social media or £1 million cash in the hand now, and why?
£1 million cash in the hand now.
Why?
Why? Because I always take short-termism. I agree that $1 million will make you money and is good for business, and in the long term you can build on that. But when I had my health club, I had one health club and I was offered £4 million for it in 2001. I was about to open up a second one, but I just couldn't resist the £4 million then and there. It was, it was just too exciting, especially as I didn't have any money. So I always take even less if I can get it straight away. No, that's not right. You should, think about the future.
Well, they do say one of the laws of economics is money today is always worth more than money tomorrow. Inflation, loss, etc.
Well, it also might not be there tomorrow.
What is it that they're saying about a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush?
Yeah, it is.
Right, this might therefore make this question redundant, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Gerald, would you rather have 5 million cash up front or 100,000 a month recurring for the rest of your life? I tried to time this based on your age, by the way.
Yes, because let me work that out. So that's 1.2. So I have to live for 6 years to be in profit at the 100,000 a year.
4 point something, I reckon. 100 grand a month is 1.2 mil a year.
Yes, so 4.5. Well, I said 5 years. Yeah, 5 years. So I would probably live that long. So it would pay me to get 100,000 a month, but I wouldn't. I'd take the 5 grand because that's there now, and I could spend it, and that's my problem. I would spend it, and I would spend it all.
Gerald, what's a 15-second or less tip for having good mental strength?
Well, I do believe that we have to disengage the brain at times because, when you get, like I'm in a boardroom now being fired questions, you're not always at your best because you're under pressure to perform. But when you're on your bike, when you're doing exercise and you're walking around, you get your best ideas because you haven't got that pressure. You don't have to deliver straight away or come up with ideas. So sometimes, we're all sitting around a table and we're discussing and we don't have a solution. And I say, let's all take a break, go for a walk round the block, and it comes to you. So I do believe that, and it's a big issue now and I'm not taking it lightly, but I do believe that we don't take enough breaks, we don't do enough exercise, not to lose weight or to be healthy, but actually to think clearly. You know, that's why when I'm in the gym, I'm not looking at the news, at Sky News. When I'm in the gym, that's my time to wind down. And I don't want to be hearing about all the problems and my tax going up and all that sort of stuff. I want to escape from that.
Let's see if there's any questions. Let's do a bit of a Q&A here. Hi Gerald, what's your take on risk in your 20s?
I just loved risk. I would risk everything. And people said to me, that they could never be like me because they didn't prepare to risk everything. But the more I risked, the more excited I was. And you know, we had a very successful business in the UK. My bankers said if you go to America and fail, they will turn on you with venom, and you're risking everything you've got in the UK. You could sit on that. That was an invitation straight away to go to America, because I believe that not only is risk exciting, it's the people that take the most risks that are the most successful, as your saying goes.
If you don't risk anything, you risk everything. What a great question there. So that was from CCK. This is from Reddit_review. I like it when people put their names on their social media handles. And if you've got any questions here on the Facebook Live, ping them in the comments. We're doing a little bit of a Q&A, a bit random at the end. So Gerald, what business are you in now?
Well, I'm in the business of speaking, you know, because I was reading this Fame and Fortune article. I think it was actually me that was doing it. And they said, what was the most profitable thing you do? What you can do in business of all your thing? And I was said corporate speaking, because it's 100% profit, it's highly paid. So I do a lot of speeches. I've written a book this year with Rob. Because of that, I've now got a lot of mentoring, and with the lockdown, that is increased because people realise that they can have an hour with me on Zoom. I still have an online business. I'm working on a business at the moment with somebody at the top end. You'll be amazed at the jewellery business, to try and go into a department store. I'm travelling around a lot, so you know I'm busy doing but lots of different things, you know, and I like that. Variety is the spice of life.
Question for both. Did either of you have public speaking lessons? I definitely did, because I was terrible and shy. I know people won't believe that, but I was. And so I went on a public speaking course in Australia and learned on a course called Platform and Presentation Skills, taught by Chris Howard, and that was really great for me. And then I studied and learned from Craig Valentine and Les Brown, who are both really good speakers, and then developed my own style over time. So yeah, I think pretty much everything I've learned to do is learned, not natural within me. What about you, Gerald? Did you get
I never had any lessons, and I was absolutely diabolical speaker, as proof in the Albert Hall. But no, actually, that wasn't diabolical. It was just a bad joke. But no, before that, obviously running a business, you have to do presentations. And I was terrible and nervous and read the script. One thing you must never, ever do is read from a script, which you see a lot of the time. And it's like everything else. Just practice makes perfect. And I did more and more speeches, and you get more and more confident. And I was at a point in 2008 where I was doing 200 speeches a year. One day I did 4. I was doing in London, Manchester, Sheffield and Leeds, all in one day, all being highly paid. So and I'm still quite, you know, I still make mistakes when I do speeches, but because I've been doing so many for so many years, you improve. And I'm still improving the whole time. And also, when you're up on the stage, you can do things that you're not capable of doing. That applies to all of you, because your adrenaline is going so much, makes your brain work that much faster. So you can say things, you can achieve things much more on the stage than you can just sitting in a room talking to somebody.
Gerald, if you were to estimate on Zoom and live face-to-face, how many speeches have you done?
Well, I've been doing it I started off, I sent an email to the Institute of Directors when I wanted to promote Gerald Online, my new online business. And I thought the only thing anybody's interested in is my crap speech, for want of a better description. So I emailed the IOD in 2003 and I said, why don't you have me back? And I went back, and there was somebody in the audience from Apt to Travel and said, well, this is just the sort of thing we want you to do, a speech to all our members about showing them about the aggression of business and they're too complacent and how much tough it is. So he gave me a speech, and then it went on for nearly 20 years that's been going. And in that time, I would say I have done, I hope the tax man's not listening, but that's a joke, by the way. That's the sort of joke that gets me into trouble.
You're not learning your lessons.
I know, I never learned my lesson, to keep my big mouth shut, as my wife says. But I would say I've done that speech about 5,000 times.
Wow, 5,000 times. And you heard Gerald earlier mention the kind of speaker fee. So, Gerald, is it quite funny, somewhat ironic? Do you sit and sometimes enjoy the paradox of your career was ruined by a speech, and now you've done 4,000 speeches and made millions as a speaker speaking on your speech that failed you?
Yeah, I always say on social media I'm about to do a speech about a speech. And it is ironic, but it proves to you that, that business is so unpredictable. Who would believe that after I made the worst speech of all time, it went down as the #1 biggest corporate gaffe of all time? That's official, because that was on Channel 4 or Sky, and then on The Sun. There's a whole list of them. I beat somebody who sold their 10% stake in Apple for $800 in 1976. And the last time I looked, Apple was worth $2.5 trillion. So that was quite a bad decision. But I beat him. So so it's ironic, isn't it? And one advantage, and there's always a silver lining in every cloud, is that I wouldn't have been doing one speech if I hadn't made that disastrous speech. And it's not only the money that you talk about, the millions, it is the pleasure that I get from making people laugh, which of course is how I got into trouble in the first place. But there is nothing more pleasurable than going to an event and being self-deprecating, because nobody likes people blowing their own trumpet. And it works, and people laugh, and it motivates people, and I love it.
Gerald, as far as it goes on the Money Podcast, I want to thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks so much for inviting me.
We've got dinner soon. Yeah, it's on me.
Well, and we're going to expensive place.
It's on me, Gerald.
Yeah, well, when they said it was on you, I thought, what was the most expensive restaurant?